Welcome to CRE Unplugged, the Founder Series. I'm your host, Ryan Elazari. Nadine couldn't be with us today. The Founder Series is where we spotlight the founders that are reimagining the built world. Today's guest is David Abrams, co-founder of HILO and CEO, a platform that is digitizing the customer experience inside buildings, helping owners and operators move beyond simply providing space and more toward delivering a more connected, hospitality-driven workplace experience. In addition to leading HILO, David is also the host of Tenant, the Tenant Experience Network, where he brings together voices shaping how we think about tenant experience and the future of work. Today's conversation will explore David's entrepreneurial journey, how technology can drive real outcomes in commercial real estate, and why buildings play a critical role in building great companies and supporting the people inside them. And with that, I would like to introduce David Abrams, co-founder and CEO of HILO. David, how's that for an intro?
It sounds good. I don't normally listen to how others introduce me, so it's a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Well, you hail from Toronto, and I feel like one thing that you and I always can kind of commiserate about is our long-suffering sports teams. I'm a long-suffering Jet fan. I know your Maple Leafs haven't won in a long time. How do you cope with that?
Well, first of all, I choose to be more of a basketball fan than a hockey fan. So right out of the gate, I'm not quite as affected by the history of this Maple Leaf team. But and we've been able to make up for that, particularly in the last year with a great run to the World Series with the Toronto Blue Jays. So, I think Toronto definitely galvanizes around all its teams. Certainly there's a cohort that, continues to remain devastated that Toronto Maple Leafs have not had a great run. So perhaps this year we'll see.
Yeah, well, considering my Rangers are not doing so well, I'll be rooting for the Maple Leafs. And I have to say, it was an amazing World Series, and
it was.
I think everybody was on pins and needles during Game 7.
It was some of the best baseball I have ever seen in my life. It was very exciting. It was great to be a Torontonian, a Canadian, and certainly the whole country rallied behind the Jays. And, it's a team with a lot of personality. And I think that's what won people over, not only how they were playing, but the personality of the individual team members and how they came together as a group. It was just fascinating to watch.
Yeah. And hopefully one day we could all beat this juggernaut of a franchise in the Dodgers.
I think the Jays are going to be. They're not going to let last year go easily, and I think they're going to really be coming on strong in the new season. And don't be surprised to see them right back in it again.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for next year. Well, enough about sports. I want to talk about your career in technology. You didn't start up that way, right? You came through marketing and communications. So when you look at HILO today, where do you see the fingerprints of that earlier chapter showing up most clearly?
Yeah, it's really been a fascinating journey for me. And to your point, I ran a marketing communications agency for 20 plus years before founding HILO. So I think for me, that experience, it really allowed me to understand the industry from the inside out. I just didn't land in commercial real estate, try to develop some technology and pitching it into the industry without that deep understanding of what the business was all about. So I think that was a significant contributor to our ability to really refine our thinking, develop a great product. And I think because that background was very much a service business, right? Every day we'd start with a clean sheet of paper and have to win our clients' trust and confidence. I think understanding the service industry has really enabled us to think differently about what it needs to be a tech company. I always thought once I transitioned to offering a technology product, it would just sell the tech, and at renewal time we'd see the client and re-sign. But it's not like that at all. In fact, I've discovered, and I've written about this, that I think that a great tech company is 50% tech, only 50%, and the other 50% is customer support and service, which is really our DNA. And I think that's really enabled us to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. And so I rely heavily on that 20 plus year background in marketing communications to help steer HILO forward.
And I think with your background being in the service industry, you kind of had that mindset to say, okay, how can our technology company provide the services that I know our clients will need, right?
Yeah. I never thought that tech was just a checkbox, right?
Right.
That it's got to drive value. There's got to be benefit. And so, we think a lot about how our clients, how the property management teams that we, sell into, how they're going to use our tools to, ultimately be better. So whether it's driving more efficiency, delivering better customer experience, we really understood what that meant. And so we think a lot about, our customer, not only the people that use our technology, the end user, but also our property management teams and what it means for them.
Can you share an example where small operational improvements had a strong impact on how tenants felt about a building?
Yeah, we've been, so first of all, we really want to form a partnership with our client to the extent that we can really become that outsourced in-house team extension of theirs. There's opportunity to really understand, where are there opportunities to create those efficiency? What are the workflows, the systems, the processes that we can look to automate, and not automate and make and sort of lose the human touch, but automate in a way that just streamlines and provides efficiency, and then allows our building operation teams to maximize their day-to-day connection with the people that are in their building. So we spent a lot of time looking at different user flows, workflows, and looking at ways that we can have our technology connect with the end user, but their actions then necessitate a reaction by the building operations team. And how do we automate that through our platform and create checks and balances to monitor, that entire process? And, with that real commitment to really thinking about that and collaborating with our building partners, we've got really tangible results that demonstrate that our tech is not just a nice to have, but becomes a must have.
Yeah, I think a must have is a great way to kind of talk about your platform. And I think just wondering from your experience, what metrics actually matter when evaluating whether a building's technology stack is working?
Well, for us, it has always been about engagement. And for us, again, we have two audiences. We have the building operations team, and then we have the end user, the occupant, the tenant. And we've had, I'll be honest, we've had some engagements with clients where the engagement was not there, and that relationship doesn't necessarily last. So we know to over-index on creating and contributing to and supporting our clients in achieving the highest level of tenant engagement possible. And that means meeting with them regularly. We just don't, sell the contract and see them in real time. We meet with them initially weekly, then bi-weekly, then monthly throughout the engagement, sharing best practices, supporting better and more consistent use of our technology. So we're always monitoring our channels and understanding how people are using the tech. Are they sending out notifications? Are they sharing information about new programs and services? Are they inviting their tenants to programs and having them RSVP through our platform and booking them in? And we monitor that so that we can come to them and say, A, here's how we could do it more effectively. B, how we can make it look better. And C, are we doing enough or too much or too little? We're always looking at ways to optimize those workflows that I spoke about. So, if people are going to have to need to use our technology, create that need. In other words, the only way to request or to complete a form or to book a room is through our platform. We're creating a need, and that need translates to engagement. So always striving towards delivering more personalized experiences and adding value. And so for us, number one measure of success for us will always be engagement.
I'm really glad that you were open and honest and you talked about, hey, sometimes it doesn't work with all of the clients. But I'm sure it delivered a lot of learning experiences for you to do better with the clients that you have now.
Listen, hard for a founder to either lose a piece of business or to determine that business isn't right for them and to say maybe, politely, let's move on. This isn't the right fit. But yes, in all cases, there's been a phenomenal learning. If I think about, we launched right before the pandemic and then got smashed. So it was really difficult. But then we started to grow. We would pick up some smaller clients, smaller portfolios, and there was a lot of learning. We don't have all of those clients today, but the clients that we now have are getting bigger and better. And they understand that they're no longer in the business of old, build it and they will come. Space is a commodity. What they're really in is this business of providing great customer experience. And so we're trying to attract those kinds of like-minded clients. And I think they're looking for a partner like us that aligns with their approach as well.
You and I have gone to plenty of conferences and events, and I think one thing I would like your opinion on is, how do you distinguish between technology that's like innovative and cool between the ones that are actually delivering like results?
Right. So first of all, I'll say that this is not a sprint. Okay. This is a marathon. And I think that, some of the early PropTech solutions promised success out of the gate. I mean, and as a founder, you always want to suggest there's going to be an ROI, like literally in 30 or 60 or 90 days. But I think we're working towards a much longer sort of time horizon. And we need to be able to demonstrate, value over the course of that time frame. Anyone that thinks it's going to be instant success day one, I think is going to fall short. So, we try to differentiate by really sharing a vision for where we want to be and where we're going and what we're working towards and how we're going to be a partner in getting there. This is hard, and we're selling into the largest asset class in the world. It's one of the oldest asset classes in the world. The reality is it moves slow and it's used to taking its time. So to be more honest, I think with the investment that we all need to make to work towards success, I think is probably smart on both sides and acknowledges more of the reality and doesn't try to masquerade what, could or should be.
Yeah, I think right now there's so many prop tech platforms that are competing for attention. So I would love to know, like, what does you and your team do differently when pitching to potential customers that helps HILO like rise above the noise?
Well, it might sound a little cliche, but we really strive to be that partner. I don't do vendor relationships very well. I'm just not, it's just not my DNA. I'm not wired to sort of fill out an RFP, pitch a piece of business with a document, hope we get it, and then, hope it signs again. So we are so partnership obsessed that even in our, the way in which we sell, so we've developed a new collaborative planning process where even at the very beginning, we create a shared document, maybe the Google Doc, and we give them access to it. And it starts very bare, and we actually build it together. So we talk about, what does our partnership look like? Who will the key stakeholders be? What are the challenges that they're facing? And we align on what they are. What are the desired outcomes? We talk about what they want to achieve and what a successful outcome would look like today, so that we know. And that leads into the next part, which is, are we the right fit? Like, I could just try to sell HILO, but if I'm trying to sell into what their challenges are and what their desired outcomes are, and there isn't a fit, I got to be honest and say, we're not the right solution for you. So we hit those right out of the gate together. And then we talk about, okay, what are the annual costs? What is this going to cost? But more importantly, what do we believe the return on investment will be? And we co-author that document together as part of the getting to know each other and understanding whether or not we have what it makes to be successful partners. So we do this all before contracting, right? We do this as a way to, again, to your point, how do we rise above the competitive landscape? We do so right from the get-go, and we really want to show that not only are we collaborative down the road, but we're collaborative right out of the gate, and we're going to co-create, co-develop what that partnership and relationship looks like. And then the other piece is the after sale. Again, we just don't wait for renewal time and hope we get it. We've really over-indexed on customer success, customer service. We've seen in the market that there's a huge gap. The number one reason why people are leaving our competitors is there's no support and service, or they don't know who to get the support and service from. And so we really put a lot of emphasis around that part of our program offering. And the reality is it's really cheap to do. Like how hard and how expensive it is to get a new client, it's really a lot easier to work your butt off and keep your existing clients. So
I really love that, David. And from my experience, and I'm not going to name names of the companies, but I remember we would talk to the customer success teams. They would always turn over every month. And it
right.
would be a new customer success person. And then you start really doubting these companies and you start telling yourself, okay, if they're having all this turnover, what's going on inside the company?
Yeah. And our senior leadership team is directly involved in these meetings, in this ongoing support and service, because the reality is to sit in on a meeting for 15 to 30 minutes, like what's that cost? I mean, I could spend significantly more time answering emails. So for us, again, to have the senior leadership team involved at various touch points to remain engaged with our clients, huge value and really appreciated by our clients, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the key. And you're doing all the right things there.
Yeah.
Through your work at HILO and the conversations you're having on Tenant, I'm like really curious, like what patterns are emerging about what tenants actually value versus what the industry noise is saying that people want?
Um, Interesting question. I think that there's been a lot of talk around amenitization, right? And I think that I'm not sure that tenants really need or want the newest, biggest, and flashiest fitness center. Maybe they come out with a New Year's resolution and go to it once a week in January and February, but then as is typical in that industry, they fall off. So, I know the rush to amenitize is important. I'm not always sure to the extent that our building partners are doing it always justifies the capital investment. And I really believe that a lot of that amenitization could be achieved through partnership with local businesses in and around buildings that are in that business, co-working spaces, fitness centers, food and beverage. So again, I know it's important, but I think there's other ways to achieve that. I'm a big fan of Will Guidara, a fellow New Yorker, a guy very well known in the restaurant and hospitality industry, very successful running the best restaurant in the world, wrote a book called Unreasonable Hospitality, and now is out, talking to businesses and suggesting that every single business is now operating in a hospitality era. So we think that really what people want most is to be seen, to be heard, and to be appreciated. And that's like the epitome, that's like the definition of hospitality. Small gestures, personalized experiences, attention to detail. These can move the needle in a really big way, and I think create really lasting impressions. So, I think building operators think they know what people want. I think there might be a bit of a gap. And I think if they pulled back and just thought more about the individual and again, some of the small ways in which we can impact their workday, I think there's a lot of opportunity to deliver just phenomenal experience.
You're talking about the neighborhoods and the communities around these buildings. We had Lisa Picard on last year talking
Yeah.
about what she sees in the future of office, and her opinion was we need to have more life errand retail
Yes.
around the office. Is that something that you're kind of realizing as well?
Well, 100%. And because of our background where we, help to market these commercial real estate buildings, often with significant retail either in and around the building, we really understood the partnership between those, two groups. So yes, we think retail, services, food and beverage, entertainment, super important. And so we always built HILO not to be a platform for a building, as in a building is a silo, four walls, but for a building that's part of a neighborhood, part of a community. So we've always looked at ways to sort of bring the community, the neighborhood, the city into the building and create, not just a community within the four walls, but a community that extends. There's this whole notion of the 15-minute city that people want to live, work, and play. I think that's hugely important. And, certainly much easier to do in urban areas, but we think even in suburban markets, there's an opportunity to use our technology to sort of bring that community connection a little bit closer to the building, even though it might literally not be at the base of the building.
Yeah, I think Jamie Hodari was also talking about that in terms of having all of the industrious locations in the suburban areas being near like gyms and being near areas where people can still feel they can get to one place, even though it's in the suburbs.
100%. And it's all possible. But what's the connective tissue between those? We like to think that our technology can be that, can help bring, these parties together. And, in the suburban market, it has to work a little bit harder because, again, they're not literally out the door. They might be, 3 or 4 blocks, or maybe it's a 10-minute drive away. But still, if you're already in that suburban mindset, that's not unattainable. We've just got to bring it, in the palm of the hand of the user.
100%. And when you imagine the workplace 5 or 10 years from now, what do you hope buildings will make possible, not just for businesses, but for the people that are inside of them?
Right. I envision, I'd like to think about this correlation between great companies and their ability to provide the best physical workspaces and workplaces. So, I want companies to be able to say that our building, our being a part of this building community is absolutely one of the reasons why our company is as successful as it is. Now, that does not necessitate that everybody work in the building every day, all day. So I am not one of those that feel the only place to work is in a building. I do believe that we can work from anywhere, but I believe the building should offer something differentiated, something that you can't get at home, that you can't get from a patio up at a cottage or from a vacation property. Those places are all going to be places where people choose to work at different times. But the building has the best opportunity to be mission critical, mission central, that so much more so than anywhere else. And I think I want people to feel connected, productive, valued, and to say that this is a great place to be. So this whole notion of great companies, people in the company of each other, and relying on these places and spaces, like really relying on them to offer them something they can't get anywhere else. So I want that not just a dotted line, I want a straight line between those two sort of objectives.
So it's fair to say that you still feel very bullish about the office market in the near and long-term future?
I'm bullish about people needing to be together, to find, to be in places that, again, improve their lives, support their work effort, support productivity, support collaboration, support creativity. And I believe buildings are the ideal place for that to happen. Again, I do not believe it is the only place to work. We're seeing office markets really thriving. A new normal that, we're not. If COVID can no longer be a part of our vocabulary, I think that would be great. I think for the most part, it is. Downtown business cores are busy and thriving. And I think that, there are still some that are mandating. I think if they held back and focused more on the experience they're offering, I think that would speak for itself and the mandate would not be required.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of mandates, so I'm glad you brought
not a fan either.
Yeah. I think exactly. You need to bring the experience. You need to get people to feel welcomed and also have that type of like happiness when they walk into a building.
It's a great opportunity for the industry to continue to reimagine itself. It is no longer in the space rental business. We are drawing more and more from hotel and restaurant as by way of example, and thinking more about each person that enters our building and how we can engage and support them and interact with them. And that's at all levels of the organization, whether it be the maintenance, the security, accounting, leasing. There's opportunities for touch point all, across the organization. And it doesn't just stop or start with any one person. It should be a continual approach. And I think that's where, again, Will Guidara would say that, every single person, involved in an organization has an opportunity to touch someone else and leave leave them with a feeling that this is a great place to be.
Yeah, great points there. All right, before I let you go,
yes,
the question you asked me on your podcast, and I feel like now it's time to return the favor. What is on your bucket list?
Well, I definitely would like to travel more. Certainly heads down, very focused on building the business. Not enough travel. My wife and I are huge fans of Italy. We try and have been often, and it's time to get back. Bucket list. I'm a wino. I love wine. I have studied. I've done my WSET2 in Florence. I would love to continue my wine education and continue to study and drink and enjoy the beverage. So that would be one thing for sure. Just the freedom to support and encourage my family along their path, while building my own business. So again, just having the bandwidth to support all those around me.
Yeah, I asked. So I was in Sicily back in this summer, and your wife gave me some great recommendations on where to go. So if you ever need David for tour recommendations, guy.
Yeah, we can definitely help. We've been north to south, the entire country, a lot of experience, and we do help a lot of others who are planning their trips as well. So it's a bit of a passion for us.
Yeah, that's really great. Okay, well, this was such a great conversation. I'm really glad that you came on. Where can our audience members find you?
Yeah, well, definitely on LinkedIn. Email david@hiloapp.com. And check out our website, hiloapp.com. Reach out. Love to engage. Love to talk. Anybody interested in joining me on an episode of the 10 podcasts? Here's a friendly plug, where we talk about the future of work and the purpose of office and the evolution of buildings and commercial real estate. Ryan, you've been a great guest, and so many others. We'd love to speak to others and get their perspective and what they're doing in the industry. So, Ryan, thank you so much for having me on your program. I as always, love chatting with you.
Yeah, really love chatting with you too. And I wish all the success to HILO and the rest of your team.
Thank you very much.
Okay, be sure to stay tuned for my recap. This conversation was a great reminder that the best technology isn't always the loudest. It's the most thoughtful. And I think with David, he didn't start in technology, but that's what exactly gives him such a strong perspective on it. The strategic planning, storytelling, and outcome-driven thinking he developed early in his career are the same muscles that he's using today. HILO isn't technology for technology's sake. It's purpose-built to change how people actually experience their buildings. And this really resonated to me as a former head of innovation. I met with hundreds of solution providers over the years, a lot of which being pitched today sounds revolutionary, but what David is doing isn't about flashy promises. It's about getting the fundamentals right. And often it's the small, thoughtful improvements that quietly shape the most successful companies and deliver real impact. Another major theme was that property technology cannot just be a checkbox. David was really clear. If you're not crystal clear on the outcomes that you're trying to drive, whether that's retention, operational efficiency, ROI, or tenant satisfaction, then you're probably investing in technology that does look innovative, but that actually doesn't change behavior or deliver value. The scorecard that matters most is one where the tenants are happy, teams are more efficient, and ownership are actually seeing the returns. At the end of the day, David isn't just talking about the future of work, he's actively shaping it. And the big takeaway for me was this: when technology is grounded in empathy, clarity of outcomes, and genuine partnership, it becomes a real competitive advantage, not just another platform. And I really love what he's been doing with the Tenant Experience Network. David has such a unique vantage point into what tenants actually value versus what the industry assumes they want. And that insight points toward a future where buildings don't just support businesses, but help people thrive. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much to David Abrams, co-founder and CEO of HILO. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. If you have any questions that you want us to answer on air, you can email us at info@creunplugged.com or through our website at www.creunplugged.com. See you next time, and keep your conversations real and unplugged.